Now it is time to turn our heads to Russia. It feels like the Cold War all over again. And joining me now to discuss what's going on is Russian-born former U.S. intelligence author and author of the book Putin's Playbook, the latest insights and intelligence from the battlefronts. She's Rebekah Koffler, and her next book, Trump's Playbook, will be released by Australia's Wilkinson Publishing in the summer of this year. Rebekah, thanks so much for coming on the U.S. Report. Always a huge pleasure. And I want to start with the big news this week, as President Trump has confirmed that American and Russian officials will meet at the Munich Security Conference to discuss the Ukraine conflict settlement. Ukraine officials have also been invited. What do you make of it?
Well, President Trump was very clear that during his campaign that he no longer wants the United States to be involved in foreign wars. And if the Russia-Ukraine war were to continue, and if the United States and NATO members were to continue providing weaponry and cash to Ukraine, we would be in World War III. And that is because Putin developed a very dangerous doctrine called escalate to de-escalate, which calls for using tactical nuclear weapons to de-escalate and end the conflict on his terms. Well, President Trump just announced that he will meet Putin's requirement, which is that Ukraine will not be part of NATO, and Putin will be able to keep 20% of Ukrainian territory. But let's just not think that Trump is handing Putin a victory here, because Trump is a master strategist. He's playing a very long game. He's playing a strategic game, and we will get out of Putin what we need in order to secure our homeland, the U.S. homeland, and in order to make Europe self-sufficient and provide for their own security on the Eurasian Peninsula.
Well, and it seems to me, Rebekah, that what's really happening here, it's just kind of turning back the clock. We've lost 1 million lives in the process, but you're turning back the clock to that time when, Russia said, look, if you just keep Ukraine out of NATO, we will all be sweet here and there won't be a problem. But then Ukraine went, made those moves towards NATO, and the provocation started, and one thing led to another. Is this an unwinding of that Democrat Obama-era policy, which was basically failed towards Russia and created, multiple Russian incursions into its neighbors' territories?
Exactly. President Trump is radically changing the policy that was actually started not just with Obama, but back in 2008 with George W. Bush. It was a very unwise idea to try to bring in former Soviet satellites like Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova into NATO, and that's effectively what Bush aimed to do. But those countries were always, for centuries, part of Russia's strategic security perimeter. It's Putin's version of the Monroe Doctrine. And what President Trump wants to do, he actually wants to return to our Monroe Doctrine, Monroe 2.0, which centers on hemispheric defense, which basically means that the United States is going to retain the responsibility for providing security for the U.S. homeland and also for the Western Hemisphere.
If a deal comes off here, does this make the West more secure, or does it encourage Putin to say, well, I rattled my saber, I went in and I got 20% of what I wanted this time, I may try it again next time with Lithuania or somewhere else?
It makes the United States and Europe more secure, because let's look at part two at what President Trump is doing. President Trump is restoring the combat potential in Europe by compelling NATO members to contribute 5% towards their defense. And that is crucial because if you look at the strategic threat environment, and we got Russia, we got China, we got Iran, North Korea, and those four are now cooperating. And despite the fact that the Europeans knew, NATO knew about Putin's plan, because I personally, as a DIA intelligence officer, I briefed NATO at a classified level in Brussels, in Belgium, in 2013, just months prior to Putin's invasion of Crimea, and I laid out Putin's plans and intentions, Russia's war-fighting strategy, exactly what was going to happen. I predicted this war, and yet NATO countries decided that they're not going to step up. They're not going to spend the money, and they decided that they're just going to throw Ukraine and Ukrainians into Putin's meat grinder, effectively using them as human shields. Well, what that is going to stop. Trump is going to compel them to provide for their own defense, and the alliance is actually going to be much stronger. And so it's not just diplomacy he's using, but he is actually coupling diplomacy with arms, with weapons. As Frederick the great Prussian military strategist said, diplomacy without weapons is like music without instruments. President Trump is adding the actual instrument. He said he wants to end this war with diplomacy, but he is also beefing up U.S. armed forces. The military-industrial complex is going to increase the production of missiles, because right now Russia produces in 1 month more missiles than the entire NATO alliance in 1 year. Well, that is going to change.
Good. It needs to. Rebekah Koffler, a more secure and safe West. I like the sounds of that. Thank you so much for your time, and I cannot wait to read your new book.